Hour number 2 of the Frank Beckman Show. Nice to have you with us in the spot where we always keep you the best informed audience in all of radio. We welcome in our next guest who has written about something that I think most of us have talked about. And that is what's happening within the Department of Homeland Security. There's a man, everybody will call him a whistleblower, but he stood up and told us what's going on within DHS when it comes to really seeking out those who might have intent to harm us, specifically from the Muslim world, radical Islamic terrorists, extremists, those that we have seen operate over and over again around the world and in our country. Phil Haney is the man I'm talking about. He's a former DHS employee, author of a new book called See Something, Say Something, and he's touring Michigan with his book and appearing. He's appeared out in West Bloomfield and at Dave & Buster's. Actually, I think he's coming up next week for a lot of this, and he's joining us here on the program this morning. I did have the dates a little wrong. You're next week, right, Phil?
That's correct, yes.
Yes.
Next week I'll be in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, sorry about that. You're going to be in West Bloomfield on Monday at the Corners at Walnut Lake Road. Then on Tuesday, Dave & Buster's in Utica and St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran Church on Wednesday, August 24th. That's quite a wide array going from Dave & Buster's to church the next day. You know that.
Well, the venues have been kaleidoscopic that I've been to. I've been to old-fashioned 1800s era theaters. I've been at very, very modern venues and everything in between. It's really something to travel around the country and meet my fellow citizens face to face and hear their concerns about what is happening in our country these days. And I consider it a great honor to have the opportunity to do this at this particular time in history before a very important election.
I was just going to say, you were a DHS, Homeland Security Intelligence Analyst, and you put together all sorts of databases, records on people that we needed to watch and what was going on. But there were real restrictions on what you were allowed to say about people, weren't there?
Well, that started for me. I first encountered the emerging restrictions on our activities. I was a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security. The agency was created in March of 2003. By 2006, I was already running into opposition from the administration. And yes, sadly, that was during the Bush era. I wrote an open source article on Hamas, a globally designated terrorist organization. And as a CBP officer, that was our job, to highlight potential terrorists and terrorist organizations. But I was investigated by actually members of the CIA contract team who said that I could not have written an article like that without access to classified information. I was ultimately exonerated, but that turned out to be the first of what was a total of 9 different investigations, and 8 of them occurred under the current administration. And part of those investigations included orders to remove information from our intelligence databases, and it happened several times during the course of my career.
What sorts of information did you have to remove?
Well, the first group that I worked on, starting in 2006 and on through the remainder of my career, was the well-known group, the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood has front groups like Council for American Islamic Relations, often known as CARE, Islamic Society of North America, North American Islamic Trust. These groups are all still operating in the United States. And in the beginning of his administration, the Obama group brought in leaders of these groups for discussions and dialogues. And before it was over with, they became appointed to be the arbiters, the formulators of our counterterrorism policy. And it morphed into what everybody knows as countering violent extremism, or See Something, Say Something. And that was the first purge that I went through was in the fall of 2009, when I was ordered to remove linking information out of more than 800 records that were directly linked to the Muslim Brotherhood network that I'd spent several years putting into the system by that time. Another one was in 2012 when I actually didn't remove them. The administration removed them on the network that I call the Tablighi Jamaat network that's related to the San Bernardino shooting and the Orlando shooting. They removed those records completely out of the system. That was in 2012.
How would things be different, do you think, in assembling this information and better protecting us? How would it be different between the two candidates if during a Clinton presidency or a Trump presidency?
Well, the Clinton administration, i.e. the State Department, had a hand in removing the information from the network that led to the San Bernardino and the Orlando shooting. So I have a very good idea what Clinton would do. As far as Donald Trump, he's coming up to speed from my perspective in terms of a law enforcement, fact-based counterterrorism policy. And that's what we need, to go back to the Immigration and Naturalization Act and custom law and actually enforce the laws that are already on the book and allow my colleagues in law enforcement to do their job. Just simply do Law Enforcement 101, connecting the dots, developing cases to probable cause, and then taking action, law enforcement action. For example, all of these organizations that I mentioned that are part of the Muslim Brotherhood network here in the United States were proven in federal court in November of 2008 to have irrefutable ties to financing of Hamas. 8 years later, and no action has been taken against any of those groups. This administration knows very well that these groups are linked through the Muslim Brotherhood directly to Hamas, and yet they have taken no steps to intervene and shut them down. In fact, they've done the opposite. They brought the leaders of these organizations directly into positions of authority within the administration.
Hey, Phil, can I ask you to hold for just a second? I've got to take a break right here. I'm on a hard time schedule, and then do traffic and weather. I want to come back and hear more because it is so fascinating, and then we want to tell everybody once again about your visits here. So if you can stay with me, we'll come right back, I promise. Visiting with Phil Haney, the former Homeland Security intelligence analyst who has written a new book called See Something, Say Something. He was a whistleblower there. He said that superiors deleted from the databases all records mentioning Islam, Muslim, Sharia law, or jihad, and how this purge might have really led directly to the attacks that we saw out in San Bernardino, where 14 people were killed, and even down in Orlando, where a Muslim extremist killed about 50 people at that nightclub. And Phil is going to be here in Michigan to talk about his book and to visit with all of you next Monday at the Corners in West Bloomfield, next Tuesday at Dave & Buster's in Utica, next Wednesday at the St. Paul Evangelical Lutheran Church in St. Clair Shores. All the events are free at 7 p.m. Now, Phil, are you seeing any sign that we, because of the disasters that we're seeing, like the ones that you mentioned out in San Bernardino and down in Orlando, that there might be some reconsideration within Homeland Security to reconsider what we're doing and how we're approaching the identification of these people who are carrying out the violent acts?